Tonight, we find ourselves on a windswept promontory where a lighthouse has stood for 70 years, its beam cutting through the darkness with patient regularity. This is a story without urgency, without conflict, without anything that requires your attention beyond the gentle unfolding of a single watch through the night hours. You need do nothing but listen, letting the words wash over you like waves against stone, steady and soothing. We will follow a keeper through his evening routine, climbing spiral stairs worn smooth by countless footsteps, polishing glass until it gleams like water, winding clockwork mechanisms that tick with reassuring precision. There will be tea steeping in quiet rooms, fires burning low in hearths, and the constant sweep of light across dark water. The rain may fall, the wind may whisper through cracks in old stone, the stars may wheel overhead in their ancient. Nothing dramatic will, no alarms will sound, no storms will threaten, no urgent decisions will be required. There is only the watch, the light, and the slow turning of night toward dawn. This is a story about care and constancy, about small actions repeated faithfully, about finding peace in routine and purpose in tending a single bright flame. Let yourself settle into this rhythm. Feel the weight of your own body sinking into comfort, your breathing slowing to match the keeper's steady pace. The lighthouse waits. The night is long, and the light burns steady, as it always has, as it always will. Let us begin. Tonight, the keeper climbs the spiral stair with the same cloth folded twice in his pocket and a jar of polishing paste balanced in one palm. The tower has stood on this promontory for 70 years, and the routine has not changed in all that time. Each evening before dusk fades completely. The glass must be tended. He moves slowly, counting the iron steps by the sound they make beneath his boots, a rhythm that has become as familiar as his own heartbeat. The walls curve around him, cool stone that holds the memory of countless tides. Outside, the wind is rising from the east, not harsh but steady, the kind that will hold through the night without complaint. He pauses at the narrow window halfway up, just long enough to see the horizon line still faintly visible, a thread of silver separating sea from sky. The air smells of salt and the faint mineral tang of wet rock. When he reaches the lantern room, he sets the jar down carefully on the wooden bench, worn smooth by generations of hands. The Fresnel lens waits in its brass housing, each prismatic panel catching the last threads of daylight. Tonight, as every night, he will polish until the glass is clear as water. The lens itself came from Paris more than half a century ago, shipped in crates lined with straw and sawdust. The glass makers who crafted it worked in workshops where the temperature had to remain constant for weeks at a time, and each prism was ground by hand, using pumice and felt wheels. That kind of patience lives in the glass still, a quiet precision that asks for nothing but care. He unscrews the lid of the paste jar, and the smell rises to meet him. Beeswax mixed with a trace of ammonia, a formula the lighthouse service has used since the beginning. The cloth comes out, and he folds it once more, pressing it flat against his knee. Then he begins at the uppermost panel, working in small circles, feeling the glass grow warm under the friction. The motion is soothing, a meditation that requires no thought. He has polished this lens so many times that his hands know every curve, every angle, where the light will bend and multiply when the lamp is lit. Outside, the gulls have settled for the night on the rocks below, their calls growing softer as the darkness thickens. The wind carries their voices up to him, along with the steady percussion of waves meeting stone. He pauses to listen, gauging the rhythm. The tide is halfway in by the sound of it, and the swells are even. There will be no storm tonight. He returns to the glass, moving to the next panel, applying the paste in a thin layer, and then buffing it away until the surface gleams. The room is filling with a blue twilight now, the kind that softens every edge. He works by feel as much as sight, trusting the texture under his fingers. When one section is finished, he steps back to check his work, tilting his head to catch the reflection of the window. Satisfied, he moves on. The lighthouse stands on a point where two currents meet, and sailors have long called this stretch of coast the Gray Margin. The name comes from the color of the water in certain lights, neither blue nor green, but something in between, a shade that shifts with the clouds. Local fishermen say the current here runs deeper than anywhere else along the shore, and that on calm days you can see the difference in the surface, a line where the water darkens. The keeper has watched that line for years, marking its changes with the seasons. Tonight, it is invisible in the gathering dark, but he knows it is there, a boundary older than the lighthouse itself. He finishes another panel and dips his cloth back into the paste. The repetition is what matters, the steady accumulation of small actions that add up to readiness. By the time he lights the lamp, the lens will be flawless. The bench where he rests the jar has a brass plate screwed to its front edge, engraved with the name of the first keeper who served here. The metal has tarnished over the decades, but the letters are still legible if you run your finger across them. That keeper kept a logbook filled with drawings of the clouds and notes about the migrating birds that sometimes struck the glass on foggy nights. The current keeper has read those entries many times, finding comfort in the continuity. He is part of a lineage, a chain of watchers who have tended this light without interruption. The thought steadies him as he works. The paste is nearly gone now, the jar almost. He will need to mix a fresh batch tomorrow, combining the wax and the powder in the ratio he learned from his predecessor. For now, there is enough. He buffs the final panel, pressing harder to remove the last traces of haze. The wind outside has found a crack somewhere in the tower's stonework, and it hums a low, constant note, not unpleasant, persistent, a sound that will thread through the night. He has heard it so often that he would notice its absence more than its presence. The room is nearly dark now, and he reaches for the oil lamp on the bench, striking a match and touching it to the wick. The flame catches, blooms, steadies. In its light, the Fresnel lens comes alive, each prism gathering the glow and holding it, multiplying it into a constellation of reflection. He sets the lamp aside and begins the process of lighting the main beacon. This, too, is ritual, checking the oil reservoir, adjusting the wick, ensuring the clockwork mechanism is wound and ready. The lens will rotate slowly through the night, casting its beam across the water in a pattern ships will recognize. 2 flashes, then a pause. 2 flashes, then a pause. The rhythm of safety. The oil he uses comes in large tin cans marked with the Lighthouse service seal. It burns clean and steady, with very little smoke, a blend refined specifically for this purpose. The refineries that produce it are far inland, in places he has never seen, but their work reaches him here, in this room at the top of the world. He pours carefully, filling the reservoir to the line etched in the glass. The smell of the oil is sharp, but not unpleasant, a scent that has soaked into the wood and stone of the lantern room over decades. When the reservoir is full, he replaces the cap and wipes the rim with his cloth. Everything must be tidy. Any spill could attract dust, and dust on the lens is a betrayal of the light. Now he winds the clockwork, turning the heavy brass key with both hands. The mechanism resists at first, then yields, the gears engaging with a series of soft clicks. The weight descends slowly, pulling the chain that will turn the lens throughout the... He winds until the key will turn no further, then secures it on its hook. The room is quiet, except for the tick of the clockwork and the distant murmur of the sea. He lights the main wick, and the beacon flares to life, bright and steady. The lens begins its slow rotation, and the beam sweeps across the walls, across the windows, out in two flashes, then a pause. Ships at sea will see it and know they will adjust their course, continue. This is the purpose, the reason for the polishing, the winding. He stands for him, watching the light, feeling the satisfaction of work completed. Then he descends the stairs, counting them again. The sound of his boots, a familiar music. In the keeper's cottage at the base of the tower, a pot of tea waits on the stove, kept warm by the... He will drink it slowly, sitting by the window where he can see the beam sweep past every few seconds. Later, when the night is deepest, he will return to the lantern room to check the oil and wind the clockwork again. But for now, he rests. The light is tended. The wind is noted. The dawn will come in its own time, and he will be ready. The ritual is complete, the lens polished, the light burning steady. All is well in the tower, all is well on the watch, all is well in the turning of the night. The keeper sits in his chair by the window, the teacup warm between his palms, watching the beam sweep across the darkness at measured intervals. The cottage is small but sufficient, built of the same gray stone as the tower, its walls thick enough to muffle the strongest gales. A fire burns low in the hearth, just enough to keep the chill away, the wood settling with occasional soft pops. He has laid the day's driftwood beside the grate to dry, pieces worn smooth by the sea, their shapes suggesting things that were never quite. The room smells of wood smoke and tea, Earl Grey with a hint of bergamot, a flavor that has marked his evenings for years. Through the window, he can see the beam rotating, its light catching on the spray from the waves below, turning the mist briefly golden. The clockwork is running true. He listens for any irregularity in its rhythm, but hears none. The mechanism is well oiled, well tended, as reliable as the tides. On the table beside him lies the logbook, its leather cover worn soft by handling. Each keeper adds to it, recording the weather, the ships that pass, any notable event. The entries are brief, matter-of-fact, yet reading through them reveals patterns. The migration of whales in spring, the fog that settles most heavily in August, the fishing boats that shelter in the cove during unexpected squalls. He opens the book to today's page and notes the wind direction, the state of the tide, the clarity of the air. His handwriting is steady, formed by years of practice, each letter uniform. The Lighthouse service requires these records, but they have become more than duty. They are a conversation across time, a way of speaking to the keepers who will come after, just as previous keepers speak to him through their own careful notations. The tea steams gently, releasing its fragrance into the quiet room. He drinks slowly, letting the warmth spread through him. Outside, the wind has steadied into a constant presence, neither rising nor falling, just a companion. The lighthouse has weathered winds far stronger than this, storms that bent trees double and sent waves crashing over the lower rocks. But tonight is peaceful. He watches the beam make its rounds, 2 flashes, then a pause, two flashes, then a pause, a heartbeat of light in the darkness. Somewhere out there, sailors are watching for that signal, plotting their course. The thought connects him to them, though he will never see their faces or know their name. They are linked by the light, by the covenant of the sea. The bergamot in Earl Grey tea comes from a small citrus fruit grown mostly in Calabria, on the southern coast of Italy. The oil is pressed from the rind and used sparingly, for its scent is intense, capable of perfuming an entire batch of tea leaves with just a few drops. The practice began centuries ago, when British tea merchants sought to recreate the flavor of Chinese teas they could no longer afford. Now the taste is tradition, familiar and comforting. The keeper learned to appreciate it from the man who trained him, who kept a tin of it in the cottage and made a pot every evening without fail. That keeper is retired now, living in a village inland, but the tradition continues. The tea connects them, as the logbook connects all keepers across the years. He sets the cup down and stands, stretching carefully, feeling the day's work in his shoulders and back. The polishing required sustained effort, arms raised, pressure applied evenly. But it is good work, work that shows its results immediately. The lens is clean, the light is strong. He moves to the bookshelf that occupies one wall, running his finger along the. There are volumes on navigation, on weather patterns, on the natural history of. There are novels, too, stories of the sea and stories of places far away. He has read most of them multiple times, finding new details with each reading. Tonight, he selects a slim volume of poetry, verses about tides and shorelines, written by someone who understood the rhythm of water-meeting land. He returns to his chair and opens the book at random, letting the words wash over him without demanding comprehension. The language is gentle, suited to the hour. The clock on the mantel ticks steadily, its hands moving through the evening. In 2 hours, he will need to return to the lantern room to check the oil level and wind the clockwork. Until then, he reads, occasionally looking up to confirm the beam's rotation. The fire continues its slow consumption of the driftwood, and the room remains at a comfortable warmth. He has arranged his life to fit within these cycles, the winding of the feeding of the fire, the making of tea, the rotation of. Each action has its proper time, and the sequence creates a kind of music, predictable and soothing. There is no rush, no urgency. The night unfolds at its own pace, and he moves with it. The poetry book falls open to a page he has marked with a piece of sea glass, green and frosted by the waves. He found it on the beach below the lighthouse, among the stones that line the tide pool. Sea glass is created when bottles or jars are broken and tumbled by the ocean for years, sometimes decades, until all the sharp edges are worn away and the surface becomes smooth as soap. Each piece is a small transformation, a record of time. The green ones are common, coming from wine and beer bottles, but occasionally he finds blue or amber, and once, memorably, a piece of red, rare as a ruby. He keeps his collection in a jar on the windowsill, where the light can pass through them. They serve no purpose beyond beauty, and that is purpose enough. He reads a few stanzas, letting the rhythm of the verse match his breathing. The poet writes of the moon's pull on the water, of the ancient dance between celestial bodies and earthly tides. It is a dance the keeper understands intimately, having watched it play out night after night. The moon is waxing now, a few days past the new, showing a slender crescent in the western sky. When it is full, the tides will be high, the pull stronger. The lighthouse will stand as it always has, marking the boundary between the safe passage and the rocks. He finishes the poem and closes the book, resting it on his lap. The fire has burned down to coals, glowing red in the darkness. He adds another piece of driftwood, placing it carefully so the coals can catch. The cottage is silent except for the sounds that define it. The tick of the clock, the whisper of the fire, the distant percussion of waves. Through the window, the beam continues its sweep, faithful and true. The keeper closes his eyes for a moment, not sleeping, just resting, listening to the layers of sound that make up. He can distinguish each element: the wind in the eaves, the creak of the tower settling, the cry of a night bird passing overhead. These sounds are the vocabulary of his watch, and he reads them as easily as the words in his book. They tell him that all is well, that the night is proceeding as it should, that the light is doing its work. Soon he will climb the stairs again. He sits, held in the circle of warmth from the fire, connected to the beam above, to the sea below, to the long line of keepers who have sat in this same chair, in this same cottage, watching over this same. The ritual is kept, the watch is maintained, the light turns steady. All is well in the cottage, all is well in the town, all is well in the passage of the hours. The clock strikes the hour with a gentle chime, a sound that has marked the passage of time for longer than the keeper. He rises from his chair, setting the poetry book aside on the small table, and reaches for the oil lamp that sits ready on the shelf. The match strikes easily, and the wick catches, casting a warm circle of light that pushes back the shadows. He carries it carefully, his free hand cupped around the chimney to protect the flame from drafts. The door opens with a familiar creak, and he steps out into the night air, feeling the wind touch his face, cool and salt-laden. Above, the stars are beginning to show through the clearing clouds, pin-pricks of light that have guided sailors since before there were lighthouses. The beam sweeps overhead, brighter than any star, and he feels the familiar satisfaction of knowing it burns cleanly, that the glass he polished earlier is doing its work without flaw. The path from the cottage to the tower is paved with flat stones, fitted together decades ago by craftsmen who understood how weather could shift and crack lesser work. Between the stones, small plants have taken root over the years, hardy varieties that can survive the salt spray and the wind. In daylight, they show tiny purple flowers, but now they are only shadows, their leaves rustling softly as he passes. He has walked this path so many times that he could navigate it blind, knowing exactly where the slight rise occurs, where the stone dips slightly to let rainwater drain away. The lamp lights his way, but it is more companion than necessity. His feet know the route by. Behind him, the cottage window glows with the last light of the ahead. The tower rises against the stars, solid and enduring. The door at the tower's base is heavy oak, braced with iron straps that have turned dark with age and weather. It swings open on well-oiled hinges, making no sound. Inside, the spiral stair begins immediately, winding upward into darkness. He pauses to hang the lamp on its hook just inside the door, for he will need both hands free for climbing. The stone walls press close on either side, worn smooth by countless hands, trailing along them for balance. He begins to climb, his pace unhurried, steady as a metronome. The steps are uneven, each one cut by hand when the tower was built, and each has its own character, its own particular height and depth. His body knows them all, adjusts automatic, finds the rhythm that carries him upward without strain. The darkness above gradually gives way as he approaches the lantern room where the beacon's light filters down through the iron grating. The spiral stairs in lighthouses typically turn clockwise as you ascend, a design that dates back to medieval castle towers. The theory was that defenders climbing the stairs would have their right hands free to wield weapons, while attackers coming up would find their sword arms constrained by the central column. Whether this was intentional or coincidence in lighthouse design, no one can say for certain, but the pattern holds true in towers built across centuries and continents. The keeper thinks of this sometimes as he climbs, imagining the stone masons making their decisions, choosing right over left for reasons they might not have articulated. The tower holds their choices, their labor, their understanding of weight and balance, and the way stone must be fitted to stone to stand against the sea's assault. He emerges into the lantern room, where the light fills the space with its steady brilliance. The Fresnel lens continues its slow rotation, the clockwork mechanism ticking reliably below. He sets down the lamp he carried from the cottage and moves to check the oil reservoir. The level has dropped as expected, but there is still plenty to last until morning. The glass chimney around the flame is clear, showing no buildup of soot. The wick is burning evenly, its flame centered and tall. He makes a notation in the small ledger kept here, marking the time and his observations. Everything is as it should be. The clockwork weight has descended about a third of the way down its track, which means it will need winding soon, but not yet. He has timed it precisely over the years, knows exactly how long the mechanism will run on a full wind. The brass key hangs on its hook beside the clockwork housing, gleaming in the lamplight. He takes it down and fits it into the winding square, feeling the satisfying click as it engages. Then he begins to turn, slowly and steadily, feeling the resistance as the weight rises back up its track. The gears mesh smoothly, well maintained and true. He counts the turns under his breath, not because he needs to, but because the counting is part of the ritual, a way of marking the action. When the weight reaches the top, the key will turn no further, and he removes it, replacing it on its hook. The mechanism ticks on, uninterrupted, faithful. The lens continues its rotation, casting its beam out across the water, marking the channel, warning of the rocks. He moves to the windows that circle the lantern room, each one offering a different view of the sea and shore. To the east, the darkness is complete, water and sky, merging into a single void. To the south, he can see the distant lights of the fishing village, a small constellation of yellow and orange points. To the west, the last faint glow of sunset has finally faded, leaving only stars. And to the north, the rocky coast curves away, marked by the white foam of breaking waves. He stands at each window in turn, checking the horizon, looking for the lights of ships. There are none tonight. The sea is quiet, the shipping lanes empty. This is not unusual for this. The autumn storms will bring more traffic, vessels seeking shelter, but for now the waters are peaceful. The Fresnel lens was named for its inventor, Augustin Jean Fresnel, a French physicist who developed the design in the early 1800s. Before his invention, lighthouse lamps used mirrors or simple glass lenses that wasted much of their light. Fresnel's concentric rings of prisms could gather and focus light with remarkable efficiency, creating beams visible for 20 miles or more. The lens in this tower is a second-order Fresnel, large enough to stand shoulder height to a man, made up of more than 1,000 separate pieces of glass, each ground to precise specifications. It is a masterpiece of optical engineering, and the keeper treats it with the reverence it deserves. Even after years of service, it shows no signs of degradation, no cracks or chips. The French glassmakers built it to last. He completes his circuit of the windows and returns to the center of the room, where he can watch the lens rotate. The light catches on its surface, refracts through the prisms, emerges amplified and directed. 2 flashes, then a pause. 2 flashes, then a pause. The pattern is unique to this lighthouse, allowing navigators to identify it from among all the others along the coast. Each beacon has its own signature, its own rhythm, recorded in the maritime charts that sailors carry. This rhythm has remained unchanged since the light was first established, a constant in a changing world. The keeper finds comfort in that constancy. The light does not care about the weather or the season or the century. It simply burns, turns, flashes, guides. He stays in the lantern room for a while longer, listening to the clockwork tick, watching the beam sweep the darkness. There is something meditative about this vigil, something that settles his mind and slows his breathing. The tower is his post, his responsibility, his purpose. Everything else falls away in the presence of the light. When he is satisfied that all is well, he takes up his lamp and begins the descent. The stairs spiral down into darkness, and he follows them, his hand on the wall, his feet finding each step surely. At the bottom, he extinguishes the lamp and steps back out into the night. The wind has gentled further, and the stars are bright overhead. The beam sweeps past, illuminating the path back to the cottage, and he follows it home, leaving the light to its steady turning, its faithful watch. The ritual is observed, the clockwork is wound, the oil is sufficient. All is well in the lantern room, all is well in the tower, all is well under the turning beam. Back in the cottage, the keeper sets the lamp on the table and adds wood to the fire, which has burned down to embers while he was in the tower. The new pieces catch quickly, flames licking up around the dried driftwood, releasing a faint scent of salt that the sea has soaked into the grain. He removes his jacket and hangs it on the peg by the door, then moves to the small kitchen where a pot of soup waits on the stove. He made it this morning, a simple preparation of root vegetables and herbs, the kind of meal that improves with time as the flavors meld together. The pot is heavy cast iron, blackened with use, a relic from the first keepers who lived in this cottage. He lifts the lid and stirs, watching steam rise into the lamplight. The soup has thickened, the vegetables soft, the broth rich. He ladles a portion into a ceramic bowl, one of a set that has served in this kitchen for decades, and carries it to the table. The bowl is warm against his palms as he settles into his chair. Outside, the beam continues its sweep, visible through the window. A reminder burns true. He eats slowly, tasting each spoonful, feeling the warmth spread through him. The vegetables are from the small garden he tends behind the cottage, planted in the sheltered space between the tower and the rocks. The soil there is thin but workable, enriched each year with seaweed he gathers from the beach and composts until it breaks down into dark, crumbly matter. Carrots grow well in that soil, and potatoes and onions that keep through the winter in the root cellar. The herbs come from pots on the windowsill. Thyme, parsley, bay leaves. He has learned to work with what the land and sea provide, to be resourceful and patient. The practice of composting seaweed is ancient, used by coastal dwellers for generations. Kelp and rockweed are particularly rich in minerals drawn from the ocean, and they decompose quickly when layered with soil. The keeper collects them after storms, when the beach is littered with torn fronds and bladders. He spreads them in a pile behind the cottage and turns them occasionally with a fork, watching them transform from slippery green masses into black, earth-smelling material. The garden responds to this nourishment, producing vegetables that taste faintly of the sea, a subtle flavor that he has come to prefer. It is another cycle, another rhythm, the storm, the collection, the composting, the planting, the harvest. He finishes the soup and sets the bowl aside, then cuts a slice from the loaf of bread that sits covered on the counter. The bread is dense and dark, made from flour he buys in the village and bakes himself in the cottage's small oven. He has perfected the technique over the years, learning how the dough should feel when properly kneaded, how long to let it rise in the warmth near the fire, how to judge when the crust has reached the right color. The bread tears cleanly, revealing a tight crumb, and he eats it plain, savoring its weedy flavor. There is butter in the larder, but he does not need it tonight. The bread is sufficient, honest, and filling. He chews slowly, aware of the texture, the way it softens in his mouth. The cottage kitchen is simple but well equipped, everything within easy reach. Copper pots hang from hooks above the stove, their surfaces burnished to a soft glow by years of polishing. The counters are wood, worn smooth and stained dark in places where water has repeatedly stood. There is a deep sink, a hand pump, fed by a cistern that collects rainwater from the cottage roof. The water is soft and pure, better than the brackish well water that serves some of the houses in the village. He pumps a basin full and washes his bowl and spoon, scrubbing them clean with a rag and a bit of soap. The soap is plain and unscented, made locally from tallow and lye, sold in bars wrapped in brown paper. It lathers well in the soft rainwater and rinses away without leaving residue. He dries the dishes and puts them away in the cupboard, then wipes down the counter and the table. Cleanliness is essential in the Lighthouse service, not out of regulation, but out of respect for the work. A clean kitchen, a tidy cottage, a polished lens. These things matter. They reflect an understanding that small neglects can grow into larger problems, that care must be constant. The keeper has seen what happens when standards slip. Grime builds up, mechanisms fail, lights go dark. He will not allow that to happen on his watch, so he maintains everything with the same attention he gives the lens, the same steady devotion. The routine protects against entropy, against the slow dissolution that time and weather work on all things. With the kitchen restored to order, he returns to his chair by the window and takes up a piece of scrimshaw he has been working on for several weeks. It is a whale's tooth, yellowed with age, found among the effects of a previous keeper. The surface is smooth as ivory, and he is etching a design into it with a fine needle. A ship under sail, heading into a rising sun. The technique requires patience and a steady hand. He works the needle in tiny strokes, scratching through the surface to create lines, then rubbing ink into the scratches to make them visible. The ink is made from lamp black mixed with oil, the same carbon that collects on glass chimneys if they are not cleaned regularly. He has collected enough over the years to keep a small jar of it, useful for this purpose. Scrimshaw was traditionally practiced by whalers during the long months at sea, a way to pass the time during calm weather or between hunts. They carved elaborate scenes on teeth and bones, ships, ports, women, whales, memories of home. The craft requires nothing but time and patience, both of which sailors had in abundance. The keeper is no whaler, but the technique appeals to him, the way it transforms idle hours into something lasting. He works on the tooth for a while, adding details to the ship's rigging, defining the curve of the sails. The beam sweeps past the window every few seconds, providing light when the lamp is not enough. He does not rush. The scrimshaw will be finished when it is finished, and he has all the nights of winter ahead. The fire has settled into a steady burn, the new wood catching properly, radiating warmth into the room. He sets the scrimshaw aside and checks the clock. Another hour remains before he needs to return to the tower. He could read, or simply sit and listen to the night sound, or step outside to check the weather. The wind has fallen away almost entirely now, leaving a stillness that is rare on this exposed point. He decides on the latter, rising and opening the door. The night air is cool, but not cold, and the stars are brilliant overhead, a vast sweep of light from horizon to horizon. The beam from the lighthouse pulses across the sky, competing with the stars, holding its own. He stands on the threshold, breathing deeply, feeling the peace of the hour settle over him like a blanket. The ritual continues, the watch is kept, the night unfolds in its appointed order. All is well in the cot, all is well in the tower, all is well beneath this in the steady beam. The keeper steps fully outside, closing the door softly behind him. The stillness is profound now, the wind reduced to the faintest whisper that barely stirs the air. He walks around the side of the cottage, following the worn path that leads to the edge of the promontory where the land drops away to the rocks. The sound of the waves is gentler at low tide, a rhythmic susurration rather than the crash and roar of high water. He can hear individual waves arriving, kicking stone, retreating, each one distinct. The moon has climbed higher, its crescent shape sharp and clear, casting just enough light to outline the shapes of things without fully illuminating them. The beam from the tower sweeps overhead, brighter than the moon by far, and when it passes across the water, he can see the surface ripple and gleam. Below, the tide pools are filling again as the water returns, each one a small world unto itself. During the day, he sometimes climbs down to examine them, finding starfish clinging to rocks, anemones opening their tentacle to the current, crabs scuttling sideways into crevices. The pools are renewed twice daily by the tides, flushed clean and restocked with life from the deeper water. Some creatures live their entire existence in these pools, adapted to the rhythm of immersion and exposure, the temperature shifts, the changing salinity when rain dilutes the seawater. Others are temporary visitors, swept in by waves and waiting for the next high tide to carry them back out. The keeper has learned to recognize the regulars, the permanent residents, and he checks on them with the same attention he gives the lighthouse itself. The promontory rock is granite, part of the same geological formation that runs along this entire stretch of coast. It was shaped by glaciers during the last ice age, scraped and polished and left behind when the ice retreated. The scratches from that ancient passage are still visible in places, long parallel grooves carved into the stone by rocks embedded in the glacier's base. Geologists who visit the lighthouse sometimes spend hours examining these marks, measuring and photographing, reading the story of ice and time. The keeper finds it remarkable that such old wounds remain. That stone can remember. The granite is speckled with mica that catches light, and on sunny days, the whole promontory glitters as if embedded with tiny mirrors. He stands at the edge for a time, looking out at the dark expanse of ocean. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of the lighthouse beam, the water extends for thousands of miles, all the way to distant continents he will never see. The thought does not make him feel small, but rather connected, part of something vast and ancient. The same water that touches these rocks touches shores halfway around the world. The same tides that rise and fall here rise and fall everywhere, pulled by the same moon. He is a keeper of light on one small point of land, but the light he tends is part of a network of light, all of them working together to make the sea safer. The thought sustains him in the long hours of the watch. A night bird calls from somewhere among the rocks, a sound halfway between a whistle and a trill. He cannot see it, but he recognizes the call. It is a species that nests in the cliffs, fishing in the shallows for small silver fish that school near the surface. During the day, he often sees them diving, plummeting straight down and vanishing into the water, emerging moments later with fish in their beaks. They are graceful in flight and awkward on land, their legs set far back on their bodies for swimming. At night, they rest in the cliff crevices, calling occasionally to mark their territory or communicate with mates. The sound is lonely but not sad, simply a voice in the darkness, a sign of life continuing. He turns and walks slowly back toward the cottage, pausing to look up at the tower. The lantern room glows at the top, a jewel of light, the lens visible through the windows as it rotates. The structure is beautiful in its simplicity, its function dictating its form. There is no ornamentation, no unnecessary detail, just stone and glass and iron assembled with precision and purpose, yet the result has a kind of grace, the way all useful things do when they are made well. The tower has stood through hurricanes and nor'easters, through winter storms that coated it with ice, through summer heat that baked the stones. It has never failed. The keeper feels a surge of affection for it, this stolid companion that asks nothing but maintenance and gives safety in return. The cottage door opens as smoothly as it closed, and he steps back into the warmth. The fire has burned down again, and he adds more wood, building it up for the night. He will tend it periodically until dawn, keeping the chill at bay. The cottage is well insulated, its thick walls and tight-fitted windows holding the heat, but the fire provides more than warmth. It provides light, sound, the smell of burning wood, a focal point for the room. He has often thought that humans have been gathering around fires for so long that the instinct runs deeper than conscious thought. A fire means safety, company, home. Even alone with the fire burning, he does not feel isolated. He settles back into his chair and picks up the poetry book again, opening to where he left off. The verses speak of harbors and havens, of ships finding their way home through darkness and storm. The language is formal, old-fashioned, but the sentiment is timeless. Every sailor wants to return home safely, and every light on the coast exists to help make that possible. The keeper is part of that covenant, that unspoken agreement between the land and the sea. He tends the light, and the light guides the ships, and the ships bring people home. It is a simple chain, but every link matters. He reads several more poems, his eyes growing heavy but not yet ready for sleep. The clock ticks on, marking the passage of minutes. Outside, the night is still and clear, the beams sweeping faithfully across the darkness. Inside, the fire crackles and the room stays warm. The keeper sits in his chair, the book resting open on his lap, listening to the sounds that make up his world. The clock, the fire, the distant waves, the creak of the tower settling. These sounds are the music of his watch, the rhythm he follows through the long hours of darkness. Soon he will climb the stairs again to check the light, to wind the clock, to ensure that everything continues as it should. But for now, he rests, content in the knowledge that all is well. The ritual is maintained, the fire is tended, the peace Hold steady. All is well in the cottage, all is well in the tower, all is well in the keeping of the light. The clock strikes again, its gentle chime calling the keeper back to his duties. He sets the poetry book aside and rises, stretching his arms above his head, feeling the pleasant tiredness that comes from a day of useful work. The fire has burned down once more, but there is warmth enough in the room, and he will build it up again when he returns. He takes the oil lamp from the shelf and lights it, the flame catching immediately, steady and true. The cottage has grown quieter as the night deepens, the sounds from outside fading to the barest whisper. Even the waves seem muted now, as if the sea itself is settling into rest. He pulls on his jacket, though the night is not particularly cold, more out of habit and necessity. The routine of dressing for the watch is part of the ritual, a way of marking the transition from rest to duty. Outside, the stars have wheeled across the sky, their positions shifted from when he last looked. He has learned to read them over the years, to recognize the major constellations and use them for a rough timekeeping when the clock is not at hand. Orion is rising in the east, the hunter's belt unmistakable even to untrained eyes. The Pleiades cluster shimmers above the horizon, that tight gathering of stars that sailors have used for navigation since ancient times. The keeper walks the stone path to the tower, his lamp casting a small circle of light at his feet. The beam sweeps overhead, its passage so familiar now that he barely registers it consciously, yet he would notice immediately if it failed to appear. His whole body is attuned to that rhythm. 2 flashes and a pause, 2 flashes and a pause, the heartbeat of the watch. The tower door opens silently, and he begins the climb once more. His legs are accustomed to these stairs, the muscles knowing exactly what is required. Some keepers complain about the climb, especially as they age, but he has always found it meditative, a transition space between the cottage and the lantern room, between the domestic and the watchful. The spiral carries him upward through the darkness. The stone walls close on either side, cool to the touch. He counts the steps without thinking, a background rhythm to his ascent. The lantern room grows brighter as he approaches, the beacon's light filtering down, and then he emerges into the brightness, stepping up onto the iron-grated floor. The lens continues its steady rotation, the clockwork ticking reliably below. He checks the oil reservoir first, noting that the level has dropped by expected amount. The flame is burning cleanly, the glass chimney clear. He makes his notations in the ledger, recording the time and conditions. Everything is as it should be. The clockwork weight has descended further down its track, almost to the halfway point. He will need to wind it, but not quite yet. There is an art to timing these things, to knowing exactly when action is required and when observation is sufficient. Too early, and he wastes effort. Too late, and the mechanism might falter. Experience has taught him the precise moment. The Fresnel lens seems to gather light from sources beyond the beacon itself, pulling in starlight and moonlight and concentrating them. Of course, this is an illusion created by its prisms and the way they refract whatever illumination is present. But the keeper likes to imagine the lens as hungry for light, collecting it the way a cistern collects rain. Each prismatic ring serves a specific purpose, bending light at a calculated angle, directing it outward in parallel beams that can travel vast distances without dispersing. The mathematics behind the design are complex, involving trigonometry and optics, but the result is simple, a light that shines farther and brighter than any conventional lamp. The keeper does not fully understand the mathematics, but he understands the result, and that is enough. He moves to the north window and stands looking out at the coast. The cliffs are barely visible in the darkness, dark shapes against a slightly lighter sky. Below, the waves continue their endless arrival, white foam marking where they break against the rock. He can see the tide is coming in more strongly now, the water reaching higher with each surge. By dawn, it will be at its peak, and then it will begin the retreat, exposing the rocks and tide pools once more. The cycle never stops, never varies, except in degree. Spring tides and neap tides, high water and low water, the moon pulls and the ocean responds. He has watched this cycle for years, and it still holds his fascination. There is something deeply reassuring about constant, such predictability in a changing world. A ship appears on the horizon, its running lights visible as red and green points against the darkness. The keeper watches, tracking its course. It is heading south, parallel to the coast, maintaining a safe distance from the rocks. The lighthouse beam sweeps across it every few seconds, and he imagines the crew on watch seeing that light, confirming their position, adjusting their heading if necessary. Perhaps they are drinking coffee, fighting off sleep, counting the hours until their watch ends. Perhaps they are thinking of home, or of the port they are heading toward, or simply focused on the instruments before them. Whatever their thoughts, they are connected to him by the light, by the simple fact of his tending and their seeing. The ship moves steadily south and gradually disappears beyond the southern headland, its lights winking out as distance and geography intervene. The practice of using colored running lights on ships, red on the port side, green on the starboard, allows other vessels to determine which direction a ship is traveling, even at night. When you see both lights, the ship is heading toward you. When you see only red, it is crossing from right to left. Only green means left to right. Red alone in front means it is moving away. This system has prevented countless collisions in the darkness, a simple solution to a complex. The keeper appreciates such elegance, the way a few colored lanterns can convey so much information. It is similar to the lighthouse itself, using nothing but light and darkness, flashes and pauses, to communicate identity and location across miles of open water. He continues his circuit of the windows, checking each direction in turn. The eastern sky shows the faintest hint of lighter darkness. Not dawn yet, but the promise of dawn, the first acknowledgement that night will not forever. It will be hours still before the sun rises, but the earth is already beginning to turn toward it, tilting this part of the world back into light. The keeper finds this transitional time peaceful, the deep night before the dawn, when even the nocturnal creatures begin to quiet and the world holds it. He checks the clockwork once more and decides it is time to wind it. He takes down the brass key and fits it to the winding square, then begins to turn, slowly and steadily, feeling the weight rise back up its track. The mechanism accepts the winding smoothly, the gears engaging without protest. He counts the turns, feeling the increasing resistance as the weight climbs higher. When the key will turn no further, he removes it and hangs it back on its hook. The clockwork ticks on. The lens continues to rotate. The beam sweeps out across the water. 2 flashes, pause. 2 flashes, pause. The rhythm is eternal, or seems so in this moment. The keeper stands in the center of the lantern room, surrounded by glass and light, feeling the satisfaction of work done well. The night is more than half over. Dawn will come. The watch will end. But for now, for these hours, he is the keeper of the light, and the light is his charge, his responsibility, his purpose. The ritual is completed. The clockwork is wound. The watch continues. All is well in the lantern room. All is well in the turning of the lens. All is well in the fatal beam. The keeper descends the stairs once more, his lamp lighting the way. The worn stone steps familiar beneath his feet. The tower releases him back, and he pauses outside the door to breathe deeply, tasting, feeling the coolness against his skin. The wind has picked up slightly, not enough to concern him to notice. A gentle pressure. It carries with it the scent of kelp and open water, the smell of the sea in its quieter moods. Above, the beam continues its faithful sweep, and he watches it for a moment, seeing how it illuminates the low clouds that have begun to drift in from the ocean. The clouds are thin and scattered, not enough to threaten rain, just wisps of vapor, catching the light and glowing briefly or returning to darkness. He walks back to the cottage, but instead of going inside, he continues around to the small shed that stands behind it, sheltered by the rocks. This is where he keeps his tools, his spare oil, the equipment needed to maintain the lighthouse and its grounds. The shed is built of the same gray stone as everything else, its roof covered with slate tiles that have weathered to a soft blue-gray. Inside, everything has its place. Coils of rope hung on pegs, brushes of various sizes, tins of paint and varnish, replacement wicks for the lamp, cans of oil lined up in neat rows. He has organized it over the years to maximize efficiency so that he can find what he needs even in darkness or hurry. Though hurry is rare in this life, the lighthouse service provides most of the supplies shipped from the regional depot on a quarterly basis. The deliveries arrive by boat, weather permitting, and the keeper helps unload the crates onto the small dock below the promontory. Oil, paint, food staples, replacement parts for the clockwork mechanism, new logbooks, everything comes in those deliveries, packed carefully and marked with manifests that he checks and signs. The service is meticulous about record-keeping, about ensuring that every lighthouse has what it needs to. The keeper appreciates this attention to detail, this recognition that a lighthouse is only as reliable as its maintenance allows. A light that fails because of neglected supplies is worse than no light at all, for sailors depend on consistency. He selects a coil of rope from its peg, running his hand along its length to check for fraying or weakness. The rope is hemp, treated with tar to resist the salt and moisture, stiff but strong. He needs it tomorrow to rig a new line for lowering supplies from the boat to the dock, the old line having shown signs of wear at the end of last season. Working with rope is a skill he learned early in his time as a keeper. The various knots and hitches, the ways to splice and whip the ends to prevent unraveling. There is a satisfaction in rope work, in creating strong connections from simple materials, in knowing that a properly tied knot will hold under strain. He coils the rope back up and hangs it in place, making a mental note to deal with it in the morning. The shed holds memories as well as equipment. On one wall hangs a life ring that was washed up on the beach years ago. Its canvas cover faded by sun and salt, but the cork inside still sound. The keeper found it after a storm, half buried in the sand, and brought it back out of instinct more than need. It bears the name of a ship he does not recognize, painted in black letters that have mostly flaked away. He sometimes wonders about that ship, whether it sank or simply lost the ring overboard, whether anyone aboard thought about it afterward. The ring serves no purpose. He keeps it anyway, a reminder that the sea takes and gives according to its own logic. He closes the shed door, secures the latch, then walks to the garden plot. Even in darkness, he can see the shapes of the plants, the raised beds he built from driftwood and filled with his composted soil. The garden is dormant now, the autumn harvest complete, but he checks it regularly out of habit. A few hardy herbs remain green, protected by the cottage wall from the worst of the wind. He pinches a leaf of rosemary between his fingers, releasing its sharp, resinous scent. The smell is immediate and powerful, cutting through the salt air, bringing memories of summer meals and warm evenings. He has always found it remarkable how a single scent can carry so much, can open doors to the past without warning or invitation. Rosemary has been valued since ancient times, both for its flavor and its symbolism. It represents remembrance and fidelity, and in some traditions, sprigs of it are carried at weddings and funerals alike. The plant thrives in Mediterranean climates, but adapts surprisingly well to coastal conditions. Its woody stems resistant to wind, and its roots tolerant of sandy soil. The keeper planted his rosemary bushes years ago, taking cuttings from plants in the village, and they have flourished, spreading slowly to fill their corner of the garden. He uses the leaves fresh in cooking and dried for winter storage, rubbing them between his palms to release their oils before adding them to soups and roasted vegetables. The cottage window glows with firelight, and he feels drawn back to it, ready to settle in for the remaining hours before dawn. He enters, stamps his feet on the mat to dislodge any dirt, and removes his jacket. The fire has burned low again, as expected, and he builds it up with practiced efficiency, placing the wood so that air can circulate, creating the conditions for sustained burning. The flames catch and grow, and the room brightens. He fills the kettle with water from the pump and sets it on the stove to heat, thinking that tea would be welcome now, something to warm him from the inside and provide a focal point for the... While the water heats, he moves to the bookshelf and selects a different volume, a collection of essays about the natural history of the coast. The book is old, its binding cracked, its pages yellowed and brittle, but the information within is timeless. He has read it many times, always finding something new, some detail he overlooked before. Tonight, he reads about the formation of sea stacks, those isolated pillars of rock that stand offshore, carved by centuries of wave action. The essay explains how the sea exploits any weakness in the coastal rock, widening cracks into caves, caves into arches, arches eventually collapsing to leave the isolated stacks. It is geology on a human timescale, visible within generations, though the process began long before and will continue long after. The kettle begins to whistle softly, and he removes it from the heat, pouring the water over tea leaves in a small pot. The leaves uncurl in the hot water, releasing their color and flavor, turning the water amber. He lets it steep while he returns to the book still in hand. Outside, the beam sweeps past the window, regular as breathing. Inside, the fire crackles. The night is peaceful. The watch is, and the keeper feels the deep contentment that comes from knowing he is exactly where he should be, doing exactly what he should. The tea steeps, the fire burns, the light turns, and all is as it should be. The ritual unfolds. The night deepens. The watch continues without variation. All is well in the cottage. All is well in the tower. All is well in the turning of the hours toward dawn. The keeper pours the tea into his cup, watching the steam rise in delicate... The tea is a blend he has come to favor, a mixture of black tea and chamomile, strong enough to keep him alert, but with a calming undertone that suits the late hours. He adds nothing to it, no sugar or milk, preferring to taste the leaves themselves, the earth and sun that made them. The first sip is hot and perfect, spreading warmth through his chest. He cradles the cup in both hands, feeling the ceramic smooth against his palms, and returns his attention to the book. The essay on sea stacks gives way to one about tidal zones, explaining how different creatures occupy different vertical bands of the intertidal area, each species adapted to its particular level of exposure and submersion. The precision of these arrangements fascinates him, the way life organizes itself according to the rhythm of the tides. He reads about barnacles that cement themselves to rocks and feed by extending feathery legs to catch plankton when the water covers them. He reads about limpets that graze on algae, returning to the exact same spot on the rock between feedings, wearing a depression into the stone over years. He reads about starfish that move slowly across the bottom, hunting mussels and clams, their tube feet gripping and pulling with surprising strength. Each creature has its strategy, its adaptation, its particular way of surviving in an environment that constantly shifts between wet and dry, between abundance and scarcity. The keeper sees parallels to his own life, the way he has adapted to this isolation, found his rhythm in the cycles of watch and rest, light and darkness. The cottage has settled into its night sounds, the small creaks and sighs that buildings make as temperatures drop and materials He has learned to distinguish each sound, to know what is normal and what might require attention. The beam from the lighthouse continues its sweep, visible through the window, a constant presence. The fire burns steadily, the wood reduced to coals that glow red and orange, radiating heat without flame. He thinks about adding more fuel but decides against it. The coals will last until his next trip to the tower, and he can build the fire up then. There is an economy to these decisions, a balance between comfort and conservation, between present need and future requirement. The village where the keeper buys his supplies lies 5 miles south along the coast road, a collection of whitewashed houses clustered around a small harbor. It is a fishing village primarily, though there is also a boatyard, a general store, a church, and an inn. The keeper visits once a month, walking if the weather is fine, or waiting for the supply boat if conditions make the road impassable. He knows most of the villagers by name, having lived in proximity to them for years, but he is not quite one of them. The lighthouse keeps him separate, gives him a different schedule, a different set of concerns. They respect what he does, understand its importance, but the life is too solitary for most. He does not mind the separation. He chose this work knowing what it required. He finishes his tea and sets the cup aside, then rises to check the fire. The coals are deep and glowing, surrounded by a fine white. He prods them gently with the poker, exposing fresh heat, then closes the stove door to preserve the warmth. The clock shows that another hour has passed, time moving in its measured way, neither hurrying nor lingering. Soon he will need to make another trip to the lantern room, but not quite yet. He has learned to judge these intervals precisely, to maximize efficiency without compromising vigilance. The lighthouse demands attention, but also rewards patience, and after years of service, the keeper has developed an instinct for the right moment to act. He moves to the window and stands looking out at the night. The clouds have thickened somewhat, covering more of the sky, but they remain thin enough that the stars show through in places. The beam sweeps across them, illuminating their underside, giving them depth and texture. He can smell rain in the air, that particular dampness that precedes precipitation, but it is still distant, not an immediate concern. The forecast he received with the last supply delivery predicted scattered showers for the next few days. Nothing severe, just the ordinary autumn weather of this. He has weathered far worse storms, nights when the wind shrieked, the tower swayed, and the spray from the waves reached all the way to the lantern room windows. Those nights test the strength of the lighthouse and the resolve of its keeper, but they also remind him why the light matters. Rain on this coast tends to come in from the southwest, carried by systems that form over the open ocean and move inland. The raindrops are often large and heavy, falling hard enough to drum on the roof and obscure visibility, but they pass quickly, giving way to clear skies and washed air. The keeper actually welcomes rain, the way it fills the cistern and rinses salt from the windows and settles the dust. The cottage roof is designed to channel water into the collections with gutters and downspouts that feed into the cistern, and he maintains them, keeping them clear of leaves and debris. The cistern itself is stone, built at the same time as holding enough water to last through dry spells without concern. He returns to his chair and picks up the scrimshaw again, working on the details of the ship's hull. The tooth is beginning to show the full design now, the accumulated hours of careful work resolving into a coherent image. He works the needle along the waterline, creating the suggestion of waves, of movement through water. The ink catches in the scratches, defining them, making them permanent. There is something meditative about this work, the way it occupies his hands while leaving his mind free to wander. He thinks about the whalers who developed this craft, the long, empty hours they filled with carving, the way they created beauty from what was otherwise waste. The tooth would have been discarded, but instead it became a canvas, a record of skill, and the beam sweeps past outside, and he glances up automatically, confirming its rhythm. 2 flashes, pause. 2 flashes, pause. The pattern is so deeply ingrained in him now that he would wake from sleep if it faltered, some part of his consciousness always listening, always aware. This is the true nature of not constant conscious attention, but a deeper vigilance that runs beneath awareness, ready to surface when needed. He sets the scrimshaw aside and checks the clock again. Time for another visit to the tower, another winding of the clockwork, another confirmation that all is well. He stands and stretches, feeling the pleasant tiredness in his muscles, the fatigue that comes from useful work rather than mere exhaustion. The ritual calls once more, the stairs await, the light needs tending. All is well in the cottage, all is well in the patch, all is well in the faithful keeping of the light. The keeper lights his lamp once more and steps out into the night, feeling the first drips of rain. They are scattered and light, barely more than mist, but they carry the promise of more to come. He does not hurry. The rain is gentle, the kind that falls softly and soaks in rather than running off, the kind the garden will welcome. The path to the tower glistens where the drops have begun to darken the stone, and he walks carefully, mindful of his footing. Above, the beam continues its sweep, cutting through the thickening air, the light scattering slightly in the moisture. The effect is beautiful, a diffuse glow that makes the whole sky seem to pulse with the rhythm of the beacon. He pauses to watch it, this interplay of light and water, finding it never grows old despite the countless times he has witnessed it. Inside the tower, the air is noticeably drier, the stone walls keeping out the weather. He begins his climb, the lamp lighting his way, his hand trailing along the wall. The steps are cool beneath his feet, worn smooth by all the keepers who have climbed them before, all the trips up and down in darkness and daylight, in calm and storm. He thinks about them sometimes, these men who came before, wonders what they thought about during their watches, whether they found the same peace in the routine that he does. Some of them left notes in the margins of the logbooks, small observations about the weather or the wildlife, and from these fragments he has constructed a sense of continuity, a feeling that he is part of something larger than himself. The lantern room welcomes him with its familiar warmth and light. The lens continues to turn, the clockwork ticking steadily, everything functioning as it should. He checks the oil reservoir and finds it lower than before, but still adequate. The flame burns cleanly, its light constant and bright. He makes his notations in the ledger, recording the time, the weather conditions, the state of the equipment. The rain is noted as light, the wind as northeast, the visibility as good, despite the moisture. These details will be read by the lighthouse inspector during his next visit, and they will become part of the permanent record, another layer in the accumulation of observation and care that extends back to the tower's founding. He winds the clockwork, feeling the familiar resistance of the mechanism, hearing the gears engage and mesh. The weight rises smoothly up its track, storing the energy that will keep the lens rotating through the remaining hours of darkness. The brass key is warm from his hand when he replaces it on its hook. Everything is in order. Everything is as it should be. He moves to the windows and looks out at the rain, which has intensified slightly, not heavy but steady, the drops visible in the beam as they fall through its light. The effect is hypnotic. Thousands of individual drops caught for an instant in brilliance before vanishing back into darkness. The sea below has taken on a different texture in the rain, the surface dimpled and alive. Lighthouse keepers have long observed that rain affects visibility in complex ways. Light rain can actually improve visibility by washing salt spray from the air and settling dust, while heavy rain obscures everything. The keeper has learned to judge how the beacon will perform in different conditions, knows that tonight's gentle rain will pose no problems for ships at sea. They will see the light clearly, perhaps even more clearly than on a dry night, the moisture in the air acting as a medium to carry the beam farther. This is one of the subtle skills of keeping, understanding not just the equipment, but the environment, the way light and air and water interact to create conditions that vary from night to night. He completes his circuit of the windows, checking each direction. To the east, the sky is still dark, showing no sign yet of dawn, though it cannot be far off now. The night has reached that deepest point, the hour when even the most determined nocturnal creatures begin to think of rest. The rain falls steadily, pattering against the lantern-room windows, running down the glass in rivulets. He watches the water stream downward, fascinated by the patterns it makes, the way individual drops merge and separate, following paths determined by invisible variations in the glass surface. The sound is soothing, a white noise that fills the space and muffles other sounds. He thinks about the morning that will come, the routine of extinguishing the lamp at dawn, of cleaning the soot from the glass chimney, of preparing breakfast and attending to the day's task. There will be the garden to check, the rain gauge to read, perhaps some maintenance from the cottage or the tower. The days have their own rhythm, different from the nights, but equally satisfying. He likes the balance between darkness and light, watch and rest, the way one flows into the other without sharp divisions. The lighthouse operates in cycles, and he has become part of those cycles, his life shaped by their requirements. The rain continues, steady and peaceful, drumming softly on the roof of the lantern room. The keeper stands in the center of the space, surrounded by light and glass and the sound of falling water. He feels deeply content, aware of the privilege of this work, of being the one who tends this light on this particular stretch of coast. Not everyone could do it. The solitude and the responsibility combined, the need for constant attention balanced with patience. But for him, it is exactly right. The light burns, the lens turns, the beam sweeps out across the water, and he is here to ensure it continues. This is his purpose, his calling, and he fulfills it gladly. He lingers a few minutes longer, simply being present in the moment, listening to the rain, watching the lens rotate, feeling the warmth from the beacon. Then he takes up his lamp and begins the descent, spiraling down through the tower's heart. The stairs carry him back to ground level, to the door that opens onto the wet night. The rain greets him, cool and clean, and he walks back to the cottage through it, not minding the moisture, feeling refreshed by it. The beam sweeps overhead, marking his way, and when he looks back, the tower stands solid and sure, its light undimmed by the rain, faithful as always. The ritual is observed, the watch is kept, the light burns steady through the rain. All is well in the lantern room, all is well in the tower, all is well in the gentle falling of the rain and the turning of the night toward morning. Back in the cottage, the keeper removes his jacket and hangs it by the door, feeling the dampness on his shoulders where the rain has begun to soak through. The fire has burned down to coals once more, glowing red in the dimness, and he adds wood carefully, building it up one last time before dawn. The flames catch and rise, casting dancing shadows on the walls, warming the room. He fills the kettle and sets it to heat, thinking that a final cup of tea will carry him through to daylight. The rain continues outside, a steady percussion on the roof, a sound that has accompanied human shelter since the first roofs were built. There is something primal about sitting dry and warm while water falls outside, something that satisfies a deep instinct for safety, and the cottage feels especially cozy now, a haven against the wet darkness. He settles into his chair and allows himself to simply rest, not reading, not working on the scrimshaw, just sitting with his hands folded in his lap. His body is tired in the good way that comes from a night of attentive work, from climbing the stairs multiple times, from maintaining vigilance without stress. The watch has been quiet, uneventful, which is exactly as it should be. The purpose of the lighthouse is not to witness drama, but to prevent it, to provide a constant reference point that allows ships to navigate safely. An uneventful watch is a successful watch. The light has burned steadily, the lens has turned faithfully, and somewhere out on the dark water, sailors have seen that light and known their position. The keeper has done his duty, and the satisfaction of that runs deep. The kettle begins to whistle, and he rises to make his tea. This time, he chooses a simple green tea, delicate and grassy, appropriate for the approaching dawn. He pours the water and watches the leaves unfurl, releasing their pale color into the cup. The steam carries a fresh, clean scent, entirely different from the black tea he drank earlier. He has come to appreciate these small variations, the way different teas suit different moments, the way taste and temperature can mark transitions in the night. He carries the cup back to his chair and drinks slowly, savoring each sip, feeling the gentle alertness the tea provides. Outside, The rain continues, but the darkness is beginning to shift, becoming less absolute, less complete. Green tea originated in China thousands of years ago, and the finest varieties are still produced there, grown on misty mountain slopes, where the cool temperatures and high altitude create ideal conditions. The leaves are picked by hand, often just the newest growth, and processed quickly to prevent oxidation, preserving their green color and delicate flavor. The practice of tea cultivation and preparation became an art form, with ceremonies and rituals developing around it, recognizing that something as simple as hot water and leaves could become meditation, could mark moments, could create space for reflection. The keeper has never participated in a formal tea ceremony, but he understands the impulse behind it, the desire to elevate the everyday into something mindful and intentional. He drinks the last of his tea and sets the cup aside, then stands and stretches, preparing for his final climb before dawn. The fire is burning well, the room is warm, and he knows that when he returns, the sky will be lightening and the night watch will be complete. He pulls on his jacket once more and takes up the lamp, stepping out into the rain. The drops are smaller now, a fine drizzle rather than the steady shower of an hour ago, and the wind has dropped away almost entirely. The air smells clean and fresh, washed by the rain, all the salt and dust carried away. The beam sweeps overhead as constant as ever, and he follows its light to the tower, beginning his final ascent of the night. The stairs spiral up, and he climbs them with the same steady pace he has maintained all night, neither hurrying nor dawdling, just moving at the rhythm his body knows. The lantern room appears above, and he steps up into its brightness, feeling the warmth of the beacon to the coolness of the stairwell. The lens continues to rotate. The clockwork ticks on, everything functioning perfectly. He checks the oil and finds it low enough that he will need to refill it when he extinguishes the lamp at dawn. The level is noted in the ledger, along with the time and the weather conditions. The rain is recorded as diminishing, the wind as calm, the visibility as improving. Soon the sun will rise and the beacon will no longer be needed. He winds the clockwork one final time, lifting the weight back to its highest point. The mechanism will run for hours yet, but by the time it needs winding again, the lamp will be extinguished and the day's work will have begun. He performs this final winding with particular care, aware that it marks the end of the watch, the completion of the night's duty. The gears mesh smoothly, the weight rises, and the clockwork continues its faithful. He replaces the key on its hook and moves to the eastern where the darkness has definitely begun. It is not yet dawn, not quite, but the approach is unmistakable. The stars have faded and the horizon is beginning to show itself, a line separating sea from sky. The keeper stands at the window watching the transformation. Dawn does not arrive suddenly, but gradually, a slow brightening that spreads from the east and fills the sky. The rain has stopped completely now, and the clouds are breaking apart, revealing patches of clear sky. The first birds are beginning to call, their voices carrying up from the rocks below, greeting the approaching day. He has witnessed countless dawns from this vantage point, and each one is unique. Each one carries its own particular quality of light and color. This morning's dawn will be subtle, muted by the lingering clouds, but beautiful in its own way. The beam from the lighthouse still sweeps across the water, but it is beginning to pale against the growing daylight, becoming less necessary with each passing minute. Soon he will descend the stairs and begin the morning routine, extinguishing the lamp, cleaning the glass, refilling the oil reservoir, preparing for the next night's watch. He will make breakfast, perhaps eggs and toast, and eat while watching the sun fully emerge. The day will unfold with its own tasks and pleasures, but for now, for these last few minutes of the watch, he simply stands and observes, bearing witness to the transition from darkness to light. The night has been good, quiet, and productive, the kind of watch he prefers. The light has burned steadily. The lens has turned faithfully, and dawn is coming to release him from his vigil. The sky continues to brighten, the horizon now clearly visible, a sharp line where the ocean meets the air. The keeper takes a deep breath, feeling the completion of the watch, the satisfaction of duty fulfilled. He has polished the lens until it gleamed, noted the wind's direction and strength, and waited through the long hours for this dawn. The ritual is complete, the night is ending, and the light has served its purpose. He will return tomorrow night and the night after, repeating this watch as long as he is able, as long as the lighthouse stands, as long as ships need guidance through the darkness. For now, the watch is ending. The dawn is breaking, and all is well. All is well in the turning of the lens. All is well in the faithful light. All is well in the coming of the dawn. And so the watch ends as dawn breaks over the water, the lighthouse beam fading into morning light. The keeper's night of quiet vigilance is complete. The lens polished and faithful, the clockwork wound, the light burning steady until the sun takes over its duty. Thank you for keeping this watch with us, for allowing yourself to rest in the rhythm of the lighthouse, in the turning of the lens, in the peaceful routine of care and constancy. We hope you found some measure of calm here, some quiet space away from the urgencies of the day. If this story brought you peace, if the steady beam and the keeper's patient work helped ease you toward rest, we would be grateful if you would subscribe to our channel. There are many more watches to keep, many more gentle stories waiting in the darkness, each one crafted to help you find your way to sleep. A subscription ensures you'll find us again when you need this kind of calm, this particular refuge. Until we meet again, may your own rest be deep and undisturbed. May you find peace in simple routines, comfort in small rituals, and the steady light that guides you safely through the dark hours. Sleep well, the light burns steady. All is well.